You know that feeling, right? You walk out of a coffee shop, you look at your receipt, and you just feel kind of ripped off. Like you paid way too much for a pretty meh experience. Well, you're definitely not alone. It seems like our daily coffee run has turned into this expensive, frustrating chore. So today, we're going to dig into why that is. And we're going to do it by looking at one of the biggest names in the game, Starbucks. I mean, look at this comment from social media. It's blunt for sure, but it really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It captures the mood perfectly. The frustration goes way beyond the price now. It's this feeling that a promise has been broken, and honestly, people have just had enough.
Okay, let's just talk about a number. $7.35. Seriously, that's the actual price of a single peppermint mocha frappuccino. And look, this isn't just about a number on a screen. It's a symbol, right? It's that tipping point where a simple everyday treat suddenly feels like an overpriced luxury. But believe it or not, the price is only the beginning of the story here.
Which really brings us to the big question. How did we get here? How on earth did grabbing a simple cup of coffee get tangled up in this huge, complicated web of corporate strategy, labor disputes, chaos in the global supply chain, and even a full-blown cultural identity crisis? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unravel.
So, first things first. To really get what's going on, we have to understand the original idea that Starbucks was built on, and then see how the company basically took that idea apart, piece by piece, all in the name of growth. It all comes down to this one concept, the third place.
See, former CEO Howard Schultz was smart. He knew he wasn't really selling coffee. He was selling this, a comfortable, reliable third place away from home and work. It was a spot where you could hang out, meet up with friends, get some work done. The coffee? That was just your ticket to get in the door. That experience was the secret sauce. It's what made the premium price feel justified.
Think about it. The brand was originally built on this vibe of community, the amazing smell of coffee beans being ground in the store, the theater of watching a skilled barista make your drink. But all of that has been slowly chipped away. Now the focus is all about speed, convenience, and efficiency, which has turned what used to be a cozy lounge into something that feels more like a fast food drive-thru.
You know, Howard Schultz himself actually had a name for this. In a memo way back in 2007, he called it experiential shrinkflation. And that just perfectly describes it, right? It's the slow death of the experience. Things like switching to pre-sealed, flavor-locked coffee bags that killed that amazing aroma, or putting in automated espresso machines that took all the craft and theater out of the process.
And you can really see it happening on this timeline. These are the key moments that sped up the whole process. The first drive-thrus in 2001 started making it more about grab and go than sitting and staying. And then, bam, the mobile app launches in 2009. That really cemented a whole new, transactional relationship with customers. It fundamentally changed the company's DNA. Now, this obsession with speed and efficiency, it had a massive, massive impact on the people actually making the coffee. This relentless push for faster service and more orders created an absolute pressure cooker for employees, and it sparked what you could honestly call a Barista Rebellion. I mean, don't get me wrong, from a pure business standpoint, the mobile app was a home run. Just look at this. It was driving more than a quarter of all sales. For the folks in the corporate office, it was a golden goose. But for the staff on the front lines, it became their single biggest nightmare. And here's why. The app created, as one person put it, an invisible queue that no in-store customer could predict. Think about that. All of a sudden, baristas weren't just dealing with the line of people they could see. They were also being hit with this unpredictable, invisible flood of digital orders. It created chaos, made customers in the store anxious, and was just a total nightmare for the staff trying to keep up.
And it wasn't just one thing. It was a whole mess of things piling on top of each other. You've got that invisible queue from the app, the constant pressure of the drive-thru, drinks that are getting more and more complicated and customizable. Remember the unicorn frappuccino? And all of this is happening in stores that were often seriously understaffed. It was a recipe for disaster.
And this was the breaking point. The company that was once praised for its happy partners, now it was facing a full-blown, historic unionization movement, all fueled by years of burnout and just plain frustration. That gap, you know, the one between the happy corporate brand and the reality for workers on the ground, it wasn't a gap anymore. It was a chasm.
But here's the thing. This isn't just a Starbucks story. While the company was having its own internal identity crisis, the entire coffee industry was getting hammered by these huge external forces.
It all came together to create a perfect storm that's making prices go up for absolutely everyone.
So here's the problem. Coffee is a super picky plant. It's really sensitive to climate. And, well, the biggest coffee-producing countries in the world are in serious trouble. Brazil, the #1 supplier, is dealing with this climate whiplash of drought, then frost, then way too much rain. Vietnam's harvest is down 20% because of drought. Colombia is getting so much rain it's messing up their crops. This is a global supply crisis in the making.
And all that instability has a very real, very direct financial impact. The price of what's called coffee C futures, that's basically the stock market price for raw coffee beans, has more than doubled since 2023. I mean, it's just skyrocketed. And when the cost of your main ingredient goes up that much, you know where that cost ends up, right on your receipt.
And if the climate and the market weren't enough, you've got politics. The U.S. put a huge 50% tariff on Brazilian coffee. Now, the official reason was to protect the American coffee industry. But here's the kicker. The U.S. coffee industry is tiny. It's less than 1% of what Americans drink. So what the tariff really does is just add a giant tax to the coffee that almost everyone is importing and drinking anyway.
Okay, so that brings us to the final piece of this whole puzzle. Us, the customer. Because while all this other stuff was going on, our relationship with caffeine has been changing in a big way, and it's basically split the market right in two.
To really get this, we need to quickly talk about the waves of coffee. The first wave was super simple. Just get cheap caffeine at home, like instant coffee. The second wave, which Starbucks basically invented, was all about selling an experience. And now we're in the third wave, which is all about craft, quality, and where the beans come from. Think of your local artisanal coffee shop. The problem is, Starbucks is still stuck in the second wave, and the rest of the world is moving on.
So what you have now are two totally different kinds of coffee drinkers. First, you've got the utilitarian drinker. They just want caffeine, and they want it fast and cheap. And you know what? They're moving over to energy drinks. Then you have the identity drinker. They want a real, high-quality, authentic experience, and they're going to those local third-wave cafes.
And this leaves Starbucks stuck in this impossible no man's land, right in the middle. It's become way too expensive and slow for the utilitarian drinkers, but it's nowhere near premium or authentic enough for the identity drinkers. It's trying to be both, and it's ending up satisfying neither.
So, what's the takeaway from all this? When you put all the pieces together, losing your identity, the labor problems, the global pressures, the customer who's moved on, what you're left with is a really powerful cautionary tale about what happens when a massive brand loses its way.
Just look at the contradictions at the heart of the brand right now. The promise was always a welcoming third place, but the reality is hard chairs and a vibe that says, please leave. The promise was happy partners, but the reality is understaffed stores and accusations of union busting. At basically every single level, there's a huge disconnect between what the brand says it is and what it actually is.
And really, this whole story just boils down to one final question. And it's a question that's about way more than just coffee. When a brand tries to be everything to everyone, does it just end up being nothing to anyone? In that relentless chase for more growth and more efficiency, is it just inevitable that a brand loses the very soul that made it special in the first place? It's definitely something to think about the next time you're deciding where to get your coffee.